Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode. It's a really interesting one that I'm bringing to the table today. I feel it's really important to share things that go on in your life that potentially have an impact on things, because I know other people will have the same thing. So I will explain how it sort of come about in a while, but I sort of kind of start, I suppose, at the end. So last week, I had a little trip to A&E, and before we get anything, it was nothing, nothing serious in the end. But it was based around the fact that for the last 3-4 weeks or so, I've been getting what I was describing as sort of heart rushes. I think they're better described as heart palpitations. And I think it's really important to stress, ironically using that word, that I'm somebody who doesn't believe I get stressed. And I think there's a huge number of people out there that would probably fall in the same bracket. So you can probably tell where this is going. As a result of that being going on for 3 or 4 weeks, I thought I'd better go book a appointment with the GP. Wasn't able to do that in my local area, so I'm lucky enough that I had the resources that I would be able to go privately. So after making a few calls, spoke to a company locally, and they said, we don't want to give you an appointment. We want you to go to A&E because what you're talking about sounds like you should be taking it more seriously. So I go, have an ECG, and ultimately speak to a GP. And by combination of the nurse and GP, helped me realise that what I'm probably manifesting is symptoms of anxiety, which, if I'm honestly with you, the first second they told me that, it blew my mind, because it's just not something that ever comes up for me. Now, I then sat in the waiting room after the nurse had first mentioned that to me, waiting to see the GP, and it's not ideal that the way I get to see a GP within an hour of turning up is through A&E. That's really not ideal, but that's a separate issue. So yeah, I was then sitting there thinking, well, bloody hell, I've never even considered this. So I'm immediately doing the whole Google doctor thing, and sure enough, when I look at the symptoms of anxiety, there were quite a lot of them that were relevant to me. So I sat, and I had a good amount of time, because obviously I was waiting roughly an hour to see the GP, which was I thought really good, actually really quick. But I was able to think about things, and actually, when I look back over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot going on. So I wouldn't say in isolation that one thing would have caused me a huge amount of stress, anxiety, worry, whatever it is that's manifesting here. But I believe this is an cumulative effect, and that potentially, and I'm guessing this, because it's very new to me. But the way I'm sort of dealing with it is recognizing that it's a cumulative effect. So over the last few years, I've had a grandfather that's lived with us in an annex who's had dementia. I've done previous podcasts on that. Very, very, very stressful. My own experience, I'm one of the unlucky ones. I suppose I'm one of the lucky ones, really. I got COVID quite bad, but I came out, but I had 9 days in hospital. That's quite stressful. Gave me quite a knock, physically, and I suppose mentally as well. Got some challenges with some relatives. My mum in particular, her eyesight has deteriorated due to arguably some malpractice, certainly some poor procedural work by a company locally. And therefore she's given up her car, she's less independent than she was, needs a lot more care and support, but luckily she lives quite close to us. And then there's some other smaller things that when you start adding them up, like, I don't know, smaller things being like one of our dogs, they're getting, I've got dogs that are now pushing 10 years old. With that comes age concerns and health concerns, and that's stressful. So in isolation, dogs get ill when they get older. I can cope with that. My mum needs some help. Accidents happen. I can cope with that. Being ill isn't fun, but you get better, right? Having somebody live with you who's got dementia, it's not easy, but you learn to cope. Actually, no, this is the thing that I have realised for my own experience. And then because of the work that I do, I'm now questioning how many people are far more stressed, anxious, or what have you than they think they are. Because when they look at individual things and talk about these individual things that are going on in their lives, it's not really a big deal. They might be serious, but you would think to yourself, I get through this, I can cope with it. But perhaps cumulatively, that isn't the case. So what I thought would be really useful with this podcast is to share my own experiences that I'm going through. And it might not be anxiety. It's very, very early doors. But I think it's really helpful to hear something that might trigger thinking in another person. Because I've never considered it as an option. Whereas now I'm very much open to the idea that perhaps I need to get things in check. And you know, the amazing thing, in the week or so since I've been made aware of this possibility, I've been able to think more calmly. I've been able to look at things I'm doing. I'm looking at creating, reducing more the stress where I can. And like lately, one of the people close in my circle, I won't give too much information about it because I don't want it to pinpoint to them, but they're having a lot of trouble with their now former employer. And because there's someone very close to me, I am stepping in and looking to see what I can do in some sort of mediation. But it's another thing. It's another thing on the list. It's stressful. And I have to accept it's stressful, and I have to accept that perhaps I'm stressed. And just as I was sort of just starting to say, the more I've sat with it, the more I've just allowed myself to recognize this, to accept it, I've noticed that I am doing a lot. I have a lot on. Work aside, work's busy, but I thoroughly would probably argue work's the least stressful thing that I've got going on at the moment, because it's a joy working with people and coaching them. There's bits of it that you don't love. I'm not a big fan. I don't do all the promoting and marketing and things like that. And there'll be things that I know other people in their work that they might enjoy still don't love doing. But in the main, that side is fairly good. And actually, this is the point that I really want to make. If from an outside looking in, and even from myself looking at the situation, I'm in pretty good shape. Everything's going pretty well. This completely caught me off guard because I thought, well, I'm happy, I believe. Business is good. Home life is good. But then I thought, we're looking to sell a house. Oh, blimey, that's not fun. Why are we looking to sell a house? Because we've really struggled to get quotes from builders for the work that needs to be done to our existing property. Now, I often use the phrase in our household, and I really probably should stop, but first world problems, you hear it said quite a lot. These are still problems, though. There's still a stress. There's still a worry. There's still a distraction. So I know this podcast episode is a little bit of a ramble, but it's literally a case of coming into my office, finished a little bit of work, and thought, I'm going to sit down, and this week's podcast episode is going to be about sharing this, because I think a lot of people will benefit from it. A lot of people would be interested to hear it, and it might just do what it's done for me, which is change my thinking, which is something I always look to do. I mean, one of my catchphrases is I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here to challenge your thinking. And nothing could be closer to the truth. Off the record and quite privately, I also say to some of my clients, do as I say, not as I do, because I'm very aware of many things that I should be doing that I don't. And I'm incredibly good at pointing that out and helping my clients with it, a little bit less so doing it for myself. And I need to pay attention to that as well. So what is the point of the episode? The point of the episode is to say, I would like everybody to just check in on themselves and ask, are you noticing anything different, both physically, mentally, anything along those lines? Secondly, are you doing too much, which I know is a bit of a broad brush description, but what is going on in your world? It would be really good to just sit down and look at what you're doing, have a listen to what your mind has to say, perhaps just trust the feelings that are coming through and listen more to the feedback that it's giving you, because there is a chance that other people are in this situation. There is a chance that people are showing signs of this, and perhaps listening to this episode might just be useful to them. So the whole reason that I and the people like Stephen and the other guests that I have on do these podcasts is we want to give something back. We want to be able to help people. And if this helps just one person be more aware of something that's going on with them, both physically or mentally, then that's a win for me. So I apologize, it's a fairly sort of serious podcast. I mean, we're never too casual and relaxed on these podcasts, whether it's just me or whether it's guests. But obviously, this one's quite a personal one. But it's not really aimed at that. It's not really a case of, oh, poor me. I really don't want that. In fact, I'm still struggling internally with the fact that this is even a thing. I don't know if you want to call that male ego or what have you. So I'm really not keen to talk about it specifically myself, but I will, because if that helps somebody. But I really am looking at getting as many other people as possible to just have a think, because some of the symptoms of anxiety aren't that nice for the people around you, and perhaps you're not even aware you're doing it. So yeah, I hope that's really helpful as always, but I really mean it this time. Myself, Steve, and other people involved in my podcast have always said, reach out, have a chat. On this one, I really mean it, because I'm more than happy to have a very open, adult conversation about things, because I know it's what's needed, and I know it's what I should have done a while ago. But it's amazing how easily hidden it is. I have a great coach, Neil Foley. This has just not become clear in any sessions, and I can't say there's any failing on Neil's part. It's not a failing on my part. It's just something that just didn't cross mine, his, anybody else's family's radar. So please have a think about it, digest this podcast episode, and I say take some action. And if that is reaching out to me, then by all means do. And I'd look forward to speaking with you. Okay, well, thank you for listening and bearing with me. I hope you'll find that's helpful for you and or other people in your circle. And I look forward to our next episode, which will be myself and Stephen again.